We're recording. So tonight we will begin our introductory theosophy on Zoroastrianism. Let me share. Okay. So let's go down here where Robert tells us chapter 11 of Isaiah is a passage favored by many theosophists and vegetarians, inspires us in our struggles today by setting the violence around us against a time when the wolf shall live with the sheep and the shepherd lie down with the kid. The calf and the young lion shall grow up together, and a little child shall lead them. They shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain. For as the waters fill the sea, so shall the land be filled with knowledge of the Lord. In the words of God in Isaiah 65, for behold, I create new heavens and a new earth. Former things shall no more be remembered, nor shall they be called to mind. Rejoice and be filled with delight and boundless realms which I create. And then our Zoroastrian interlude. If anyone wants to start reading and read the first paragraph, that would be marvelous.
I'd be happy to.
Thank you, Rosanna.
Zoroastrian interlude. A word should be said here about the ancient Zoroastrian religion because its influence on Western monotheism can be felt in words like these. Some scholars have pointed out that passages in the Hebrew scriptures involving such themes as cosmic war between God and Satan, the consummation of linear time and divine judgment, the defeat of Satan, and the resurrection of the dead in a new heaven and earth are only in the latter parts of the Old Testament, or even do not appear in Judaism until the 3 centuries or so between the Old and the New Testaments.
Keep going.
Excuse me. To be sure, these themes are important in the New Testament and to Christianity and Islam. They may be considered gifts of the Magi, the wise men who visited the infant Jesus, for that word refers to Zoroastrian priests. But the themes began their biblical appearance only during and after the Babylonian exile. This was a time when Zoroastrianism, which had long held concepts like these, could have influenced the biblical tradition. Remember that the exiled Jews had contact with the religion of the ancient Persians and were rescued by Cyrus, the great Zoroastrian emperor.
Thanks. Okay, I think we already talked about the discrepancy in time, but both in Annie Besant's book and here, what is that when you make reference to something or you make a point by using all these other points?
Extrapolation.
Yes, an extrapolation. It seems like what they're doing here.
Well, scholars in general have a hard time dating non-Western civilizations because they didn't keep historical records. I mean, the Greeks and the Romans were very interested in keeping historical records, and our Western civilization comes from there. But all the rest weren't that obsessed, let's say, with the past. So then when they have to guess, it's hard. There are no written documents.
Okay, does anybody, oh, sorry, I'm speedy, moving too fast. So does anybody have anything else?
Well, about the concept itself, there are different religions try to explain the origin of evil in different ways, and Zoroastrianism presents it as a war between a god and a demon, let's say, and like Buddhism and Hinduism present it as a problem of ignorance and illusion, and the Gnostics would talk about the world as a prison that came from a mistake that a lower god that was a creator made. So in regular Christianity and Judaism, they took like the same idea, especially Christianity, this war between the two, because it's true that in the Old Testament, Satan, even in the book of Job, Satan was working for God. There wasn't this,
like a duality.
Yeah, that duality is so marked. That was more in Christianity, I guess. So it's very probable that all this came from Zoroastrianism.
Okay, does anybody want to continue reading?
I can read if you want.
Thank you.
The Persians were cousins of the Aryans who entered India. The word Iran is a variant of Aryan, and like them were cattle herders. Among them, sometime before 600 BCE, arose the prophet Zarathustra, Zoroaster in Greek, who, like Isaiah, was repelled by animal sacrifices and the rest of the traditional cults. Instead, he saw in a great vision on a mountaintop that one God, Arua or Mazda, or Lord of Light, reigns over the universe. Arua is in cosmic battle against Ahriman, the lie, the evil force. Humans must choose out of free will which side they are going to be on. This is not a ritual matter, but a moral choice. Are we going to serve truth and good or the lie? Whenever we choose the good, we strengthen Arua Mazda and weaken Ahriman. Moreover, after death, those who chose good will be rewarded in heaven. Those who chose the lie will suffer punishment in hell. In the end, on the last day, Arua Mazda will defeat evil. He will purify the entire world and reign over it. All persons will be raised in a general resurrection. The souls of the wicked, having been purified along with the earth, will be brought out of hell with their sentences terminated. Together, all will enter a new age in a new world, free from all evil, ever young and rejoicing. Just before the last day, it was said, Zoroaster would return in the form of a prophet, conceived of a virgin by his own seed stored in a mountain lake. To what extent parallels between motifs in Zoroastrianism and later Judaism, Christianity, and Islam represent borrowings, and to what extent they represent independent religious realizations, the reader must decide.
So that last paragraph can give some pause for contemplation or discussion.
Well, there is historically Judaism, early Judaism was polytheistic. The Jehovah was supposed to be the God of the Jews, as opposed to the gods of other people. So Jehovah was never at the beginning supposed to be the God. This was a God that made a covenant with these people, and these people were going to worship that God. It was later on, as Robert suggests there, that the idea that Jehovah was the one God developed. So I don't think among academics there is any debate, about this progression, and that's why it seems quite possible that they borrow it from the Zoroastrians, because at the beginning the Zoroastrians were the first monotheistic religion when the Jewish were not monotheistic.
And there's a lot of things in here to kind of mull over and think about. I think of the Zoroastrianism when they talked about free will. That to me, that seems like a concept that that has an affiliation with Theosophism, ancient, the ancient wisdom type thing, your free will. And I thought that was interesting. But they talk about your moral choice. Are we going to serve truth and good, or the lie? And I wondered how did they perceive you find truth? What is your path to truth? And I just, wonder how they would do that. I mean, meditation is a key thought and concept in Buddhism and others, but I couldn't quite understand Zoroastrianism, how they would do it.
I think the other article might answer that a little better. I know that their thoughts, it's good thoughts, good deeds. I think good thoughts, good deeds, good thoughts, good words, good deeds is their kind of mantra that they go by. Does anybody else have any?
Yeah, that's their ethics, and then all the rituals and ceremonies that was important as in Judaism also. By the rituals you are worshiping, and the worshiping of the fire. I don't think that, I never heard much about meditation in connection to Zoroastrianism, but I may be wrong, I don't know.
Or maybe their daily life was, all their stuff was done in a meditative way.
I had 2 points, one along with what Dana said. Humans must choose out of free will which side they are going to be on. He said, this is not a ritual matter, but a moral choice. And when we talk about a moral choice, that's more associated with the higher self. But that seems to be in conflict with the higher self deciding if it's going to be good or bad. Because if it's in the higher self, it should always strive to be good. So that was a little confusing to me. And the second one was, and I really like this one, together all will enter a new age in the world, free from all evil. This is the important part. Ever young and rejoicing, so we don't have to grow old. I actually like the way they set that up, and I may switch over. So. So I don't know if anybody had any comment on the free will issue. How do you choose something bad from the higher self?
Go ahead, Elena.
Well, I question the idea of morality being related to the higher self. I think morals are more related to culture. For example, in some cultures, women are property, and their morals are built around that idea. So I don't know that, I think it's based on culture, not
a higher thought.
Yeah.
Like, I was thinking morals more along the lines of personal ethics, that type of thing. But you're right. There were where you're talking, morals would be more from the lower self in that vein. No, that makes sense. Thank you. I can see that.
Yeah, it's possible that these materials that we're reading, they're just very limited. They don't give us much of an idea, but the article from the contractors talks about Asha, which seems to be universal law. It says Zoroastrianism views the world as having been created by Ahura Mazda and as meant to evolve to perfection according to the law or plan of Asha, the divine order of things. So that sounds more like our theosophical idea of universal law,
right,
and a plan of evolution.
no, that
And
makes sense.
Yeah, it says the law of Asha is the principle of righteousness or rightness by which all things are exactly what they should be. I don't know. Anyway, righteousness is the highest virtue for them.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments before we go on to the next set or the next article? Okay.
We talked about free will and all that, but then in that paragraph in the end, in the last day, Ahura Mazda will defeat evil. But the way this sounds is really that man's not really involved in this. There's a God who's in charge and doing it all. And we just follow.
Isn't that a common, isn't what is being said here, this paragraph, not common, but in the Bible that they say about Jesus's coming?
Yes, you're right. And that seems to be what this seems to be saying as well. This is, it's all based on that. You don't free will, you don't choose here, you follow. There's someone who's orchestrating and you're part of that plan.
Like, I think the free will comes from your choice of whether, what they say, go with the light or the lie, or the truth or the lie. So your choice is in there, your free will to choose.
Yeah, but I think the question is, does that affect the idea of salvation of the world, or is something that God does regardless of this?
Right.
Yeah, I don't know, deep enough Zoroastrianism.
Right. Well, we can see what, keep that thought in mind, Dana, and we can see what this article says about it. I know this one goes it has a little more substance. So I'll start off with this first paragraph. This isn't what you, Elena, this isn't what you referenced, right? You referenced later in the article. I don't want to reread it if. Oh, you're muted. Oh,
yeah, just
okay. I'll go ahead. Zoroastrianism, although the smallest of the major religions of the world in the number of its adherents, is historically one of the most important. Its roots are in the proto-Indo-European spirituality that also produced the religions of India. It was the first of the world's religions to be founded by an inspired prophetic reformer. It was influential on Mahayana Buddhism, and especially on the Abrahamic religions of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. To the latter three, Zoroastrianism bequeathed such concepts as a cosmic struggle between right and wrong, the primacy of ethical choice in human life, monotheism, a celestial hierarchy of spiritual beings, angels and archangels, that mediate between God and humanity, a judgment for each individual after death, the coming of a Messiah at the end of this creation, and an apocalypse culminating in the final triumph of good at the end of the historical cycle. So we've kind of gone over the history. If anyone else has read this and wants to stop and discuss any points, just give a shout or raise a hand. Just Zarathustra, which means shining light. And then here the dates they give reference or reason for the dates. And the contractors talk here. First, the Great Brotherhood. And this is the reason why it predates all these other religions. First, the Great Brotherhood has preserved the ancient writings stored in underground temples and libraries. There are people today and have been those in the past who have been permitted to set eyes on these ancient readings. Second, there are the imperishable records of the Akasha itself. According to these records, Zoroastrianism and Hinduism are the two oldest religions of our modern humanity. The Iranians, in their first migration into Iran, were led by the great teacher Zoroaster, who belonged to the same mighty brotherhood as Manu of the Indic tradition and was a high initiate of the same great lodge, taught by the same primordial teachers, called the Sons of the Fire. From the great teacher came down a line of prophets who superintended the early development of the Iranian peoples, and all of whom bore the name Zoroaster. The Zoroaster the Greeks refer to may have been the seventh Zoroaster in this line of prophets. And I think I remember Aban talking about these sons of light coming here in the golden age when the gods walked among humanity. So that's what I thought. Anybody else got anything? Okay. All right, this is more historical. So Zoroastrianism flourished during the three great Persian empires. Cyrus showed great respect for the nations he had conquered. He allowed them to govern themselves and to follow their own religious beliefs. I highlighted that more for me because I read in a book that Annie Besant wrote about conquering other nations and going to war with other nations. And I read it with the mindset of war today. And that is very different of conquest. To me, it was more conquest in the olden age, old ages, ancient, in the ancient times. So to me, that was, if I understood right, that when Annie Besant was talking about it, it was how people actually interacted or shared culture and religion was by these conquests. And in this part here, it talks about how a more like humane conquest.
A problem that was in the past is that, like today, we take an airplane and we go anywhere. In the past, you had to go, on a horse or something like that, and you couldn't survive. You couldn't get enough provisions to go from one country to the other on a horse. The only way that you could go is with the armies, who brought a lot of provisions. It was a big production. So many philosophers would travel with the armies, and that's how the exchange of culture would happen through conquest in that sense.
That the book or the series or the stories, Arabian Nights, or is that what it is? That was written by a philosopher who traveled in I don't know if anybody knows it, have heard of that, but okay. This was I highlighted this because has anyone been to Los Angeles and seen the Citadel, or on their way to Los Angeles, the Citadel? It's a shopping area now. I guess I looked up the history. It started as a tire shop, but it's built with Zarathustra's on it and the eagle symbols on it. And at Christmas time, it's decorated really cool. So I looked it up, and that was from, it's called an Assyrian temple is what it was built. And it was the time of this this empire that's down here, so which Alexander the Great conquered. And so here everyone calls him Alexander the Great, the Greek does. The Egyptians and others, it's known as Alexander the Accursed. So it's
by the Persians.
But yeah, by the Persians. All right, so this was just more history. The missionary activity shows that Zoroastrianism was really a universal religion and not an ethnic religion limited to one people. The Arabs mistreated the Zoroastrians in many ways and made life very difficult for those who chose not to convert. Consequently, a group of Zoroastrians moved or made their trek to India. That was the idea there. So the immigrants to India became known as the Parsis. Okay, so here's their beliefs on cosmology. I don't know how you guys want to proceed from here. If you want to read through it, if you read the article and you want to discuss it, it's all very interesting because a lot of it, you can see the connection between Christianity, Theosophy. How do you want to go forward?
Yeah, I think we can read some and
Let's
then
read it.
State sound it, yeah.
Okay, does anybody want to go ahead and read?
I'll read a little bit.
Okay.
Cosmology. In Zoroastrian cosmology, the head of the manifested universe is Ahura Mazda, the wise Lord. He is the universal and pervasive source and fountain of all life. But behind or beyond Ahura Mazda is Zarvan, Akarana, boundless time and boundless space, the unmanifested absolute from which the manifested logos, Ahura Mazda, came forth. Ahura Mazda is depicted in the Zoroastrian scriptures as a kind of trinity. Praise to thee, Ahura Mazda, threefold before other creations. From Ahura Mazda came a duality, the twin spirits of Spenta Manu, the holy or bountiful spirit, and Angra Manu, the destructive or opposing spirit. The twin spirits are popularly thought of as a good and evil, but rather they are two principles that represent all the opposites of life. In her lecture on Zoroastrianism, Annie Besant has this to say of them. Good and evil may be said to only come into existence when man in his evolution develops the power of knowledge and of choice. The original duality is not of good and evil, but is of spirit and matter, of reality and non-reality, of light and darkness, of construction and destruction, the two poles between which the universe is woven and without which no universe can be. There are two names again that give us the clue to the secret, the increaser and the destroyer, the one from which the life is ever pouring forth, and the other, the material side, which belongs to form and which is ever breaking up in order that life may go on into higher expression.
Okay, let's pause there because that's a lot to unwrap right there. Yeah, go. I mean, I just see all the connections there. If anybody else wants to comment. Okay, is it obvious to everybody and we can go on?
Mhm.
All right. So after the Trinity of Ahura Mazda and the twin spirits that emanated from him is a sevenfold expression of the divine reality. These seven are called the holy or bountiful immortals, the highest intelligences. They are sometimes thought of as archangels and sometimes as aspects of Ahura Mazda himself. These seven mighty intelligence are also guardians of various kingdoms of nature. So they are as follows, and I just highlighted it for time. So the one Lord is present everywhere. Number two, good mind is divine wisdom, illumination, and love, the mental capacity to comprehend. And then this connection is the animal kingdom. Number three, highest truth, often translated as righteousness, and it is associated with the element of fire. In number 4, in theological terms, it represents the kingdom of heaven. In human terms, it represents the ideal society, the mineral kingdom. So it's associated with the mineral kingdom. Number 5, holy or bountiful devotion, theologically speaking, is the attitude of piety and devotion. Ethically, it is the attitude of benevolence, and it is the element of earth. Number 6, wholeness is the state of perfection, complete well-being, spiritual and physical integrity, and is associated with the element of water. 7, immortality is the state of immortal bliss. It is associated with the plant kingdom. So anybody got any comments on that? Do you have any comments on that? So we can see the 7-fold constitution.
Yeah, and those are like the primordial 7 in the secret doctrine, that are the highest beings manifested.
Okay. All right. Does anyone want to read the next paragraph? Go ahead, just read.
These 7 can be thought of either as cosmic principles or as human principles, the macrocosm and the microcosm. It is through our use of good mind, bohumana, practicing love and devotion, spent our mighty, and following the path of righteousness, asha bahishta, that we can bring about the ideal state of things, Jatra Vairya, in which ultimate perfection, or avatat, and immortality, ameratat, will prevail. Human beings are not bystanders in life. We are the prime agents through whose actions the promise of Ahura Mazda will be fulfilled. With Ahura Mazda, we are co-creators of the ideal world. And this would address what Dana was asking. Here, it seems that the human beings are active agents in fulfilling that promise.
And here too, Ahura Mazda is not necessarily the he that he was earlier. We are prime agents through whose actions that's not what I would read. Sorry. Yeah, never mind.
He's supposed to be the logos, and he's also one of the 7 Amesh pentas. So he's probably, Blavatsky many times talk about the 1 and the 6 manifestations, 1 plus 6. So he's probably like the synthesis of the other 6 there.
Mhm.
Okay. Jerry, did I see your hand up to read?
You saw my hand up to itch my ear.
Okay. So we'll take that as will you read the next paragraph, the next section on worldview?
I would be happy to do that if
Thank
someone
you.
can help me with the pronunciation problems.
Yeah, you know what? You can, I don't know if it makes it any easier. You can skip over those because usually they give, that's what I did. They give the English, so.
Okay, well, I'll give it a shot. Zoroastrianism views the world as having been created by Ahura Mazda and as meant to evolve to perfection according to the law or plan of Asha, the divine order of things. Sounds like Dharma, doesn't it? The law of Asha is the principle of righteousness or rightness, by which all things are exactly what they should be. In their most basic prayer, Hashem Vohu, in that, that's one of those words, Hashem Vohu, repeated every day, Zoroastrians affirm the law of Asha. Righteousness is the highest virtue. Happiness to him who is righteous for the sake of righteousness. This is the central concept in the Zoroastrian religion. Asha is the ultimate truth, the ideal of what life and existence should be. Keep going.
Yes, please, the whole section.
Duality exists as part of manifestation, but human beings also have free will to choose between the dual opposites. As they have the power of choice, they have also the personal responsibility of choosing well. Spenta Manyu, the bountiful spirit, promotes the realization of Asha, Angra Manyu. The destructive spirit violates Asha. We have a choice between them, between spirit and matter, between the real and the unreal. Personal salvation is attained through making the right choice, and the salvation of the world called Frashokereti is the, my apologies for the
Yeah.
broken translation, is the restoration of the world to its perfect state, one that is complete according to in accord with Asha. As human beings make the right choices in their lives, they are furthering the realization of Frashokereti. Sounds Italian.
Yeah. All right. I'll continue. Just say stop. I want to talk, and I'll be happy to stop.
I just again, I just want to make a comment though, when they talk about your progression here, you know, your personal salvation and, you know, your goal of righteousness and all that, but not seeing their path to enlightenment, so to speak, or their evolution, their path to evolution. And there's, you know, probably more to this, but, you know, even in the other, when they talked about heaven and, you know, your choice between heaven and then you just go to, you know, living in, I forgot what they called it here, but, you know, you're in a state that's of happiness, of highest virtue and all that. But I still don't see the development beyond that.
Are you saying you're not seeing the exact practice, like meditate 3 times a day? Is that what?
Where they're, you know, that they're moving toward that, because they're getting people to, you know, choose heaven over hell type of thing. Beyond that, you know, you know, the Mahatmas, they develop and they develop and they develop and they have an evolutionary path and they become more and more divine. And I just trying to see how this, how they're, you know, taking people along this path here.
Yeah, but that concept was not very common in ancient religions. You know, you had in Christianity and Judaism, you are just a good person and then you go to heaven. This seems to be similar. In Hinduism and Buddhism, you get rid of desire and you stop reincarnating and go to nirvana. That idea of evolution and all that, you know, Blavatsky always struggled to show how this was present in other religions in allegorical ways, because for the masses, that was not really a common concept. So I would expect this to be similar to Christianity.
Yeah, right.
It seems to me it's very difficult not to look at these traditions through the lens of our Christian orientation in our culture. So, you know, good and evil, Satan and God, and we have all these notions that we've kind of been educated with in our Western tradition, but this predates the Christian tradition. And I think the challenge to look at all these religious traditions, and I think this is what the Secret Doctrine is trying to help us to do, is to see the metaphysical background behind it, rather than to see it just in terms of you know, its moral structure and its instructions to how men should or shouldn't live. You know, behind that, there's a metaphysics. So you wonder, like, this hyper emphasis on good and evil, could that really just be a concretization of the spirit matter dichotomy in metaphysics? And
I'm sorry.
no, that might be enough. I don't want to keep going.
The other thing that I haven't really seen here so far, I know this is just a brief overview, is, you know, we talk about, you know, the wheel of birth and death, where each incarnation you're progressing and evolving. But the prior section we read with Robert basically said, you know, when the end comes, everybody who's in hell, along with everyone who's in heaven, so I guess it's regardless of where you are with respect to material and matter, automatically rises up to all goodness without really making the individual effort to evolve or progress, you know, through the incarnations. Now, maybe that's described in more depth somewhere else, because it does suggest that we have the free will to choose spirit over matter, or you know, heaven over hell. So there does seem to be a choosing process, and I would assume the more you choose heaven, the more you evolve. But you know, according to when God finally arrives, if you were in hell, you don't seem to have to do all the work. You automatically move right to the top with anyone who is in heaven. It's just a different, you know, at least maybe we have limited information on this, but you know, that kind of jumps out at me.
We do have limited information. Aban had mentioned, and it's in this article too, that I think it was Alexander the Accursor burned all the Persian library, and so they lost all of their texts that might have given the backstory to this.
Yeah,
And a lot of it was in there, apparently in the priests' heads. They memorized it, apparently.
Right.
So it was lost on a whole bunch of levels. I mean, being an oral tradition, I guess, at that time.
Right. And the other thing,
Written, and there were limited texts themselves, or
Michelle, if you scroll down further, is there any mention of heaven and hell in this?
I think it in backwards.
Life after days.
Yeah.
Life after
Left
death.
after death. Or we talked about it earlier, but what I wanted to mention was in Annie Besant's book, In the Outer Court, she talks about the trek around the mountain, and that not everybody will make it from the bottom of the mountain to the top of the mountain of their own accord. That it's our job as theosophists or occultists to get to the top of the mountain, because if enough of us get to the top of the mountain, we can go back and help those get up there. And I believe there's even a point where the rest just get pulled up. I always thought of it like helicoptered up. And even though they're on the top of the mountain, they're not inside the outer court. They're not in the inner sanctum. They haven't done the work. So their work in the afterlife, or the evolution going on there, isn't the same as those who do.
That's a whole lecture in itself.
Yeah.
But it also referred to the fact that at the end of the great period, or the Manvantara, that everything is absorbed back to the source. But you know, of course, it's not explained here, but that's kind of the concept in Theosophy.
Yeah. So I guess my idea was that I see it as alluding to that.
If you were to think of this good and evil dichotomy in the Zoroastrian tradition as being symbolical of the yin-yang relationship, symbolical of the spirit-matter relationship, there's another concept too that would be fun to compare it with. In one of the Hindu schools, there's Nitya Pralaya, ceaseless dissolution, and then Prati Sarga, which is perpetual creation. And there's a eternal tension between these two forces, but the tension between them is kind of the engine of life. In other words, it's not helpful to see one as entirely good and the other one as entirely bad. They're actually part of the same thing, like the yin yang symbol represents. So that's why I wonder if maybe this hyper focus on good and evil in the Zoroastrian tradition, I wonder if that's kind of a Christian lens into this and not as accurate as if we were to look at it kind of from outside of that lens.
I think the polarity, the polarity that's implied is the web that all of the 7 principles we discussed a little bit ago are woven into. And to me, this is a very sophisticated metaphysical model, and especially important because, we a minute ago that Michelle mentioned the symbol of the mountain and the spiraling versus the straight up the mountain itself. The mountain is these hierarchies of beings, of virtues, of forces, and as we ascend, whether we spiral with the masses or move directly into a union with all of the various principles within us, which are alive and represented by angelic kingdoms, whether we want to go one way or the other, we still have to integrate the 7 principles within ourselves and find that they're all of one piece, and that the polarity is in fact a necessary way of making sense of what we experience each day. So whether it's good and evil or spirit matter, it's all of one piece. And everything eventually is spun between that polarity. As Jerry has mentioned, it's the engine, that those forces that drive it's that photic energy, that the love that binds the polarities, that makes them one piece all the time, that moves everything to its end. So I really love the way the inside and the outside here are all of one piece in this philosophy.
There's only like a page and a half. Do you want me to read Life After Death, and then we can go quickly through the practices which Aban had mentioned? Is that?
We can skip the practices.
Okay. All right. Life after death. What happens after death, according to the Zoroastrian tradition? After the death of the body, the soul remains in this world for 3 days and nights in the care of one of the angels. During this period, prayers are said and rituals performed to assure a safe passage of the soul into the spiritual realm. On the dawn of the 4th day, the spirit is believed to have crossed over to the other world, where it arrives at the allegorical Chinvat Bridge. At the Chinvat Bridge, the soul meets a maiden who is embodied of all good words, thoughts, and deeds of its preceding life. If the soul has led a righteous life, one in accord with the divine plan, the maiden appears in a beautiful form. If not, she appears as an ugly hag. This image, fair or foul, confronts the soul, and the soul acknowledges that the image is an embodiment of its own actions and thereby judges itself, knowing whether it is worthy to cross over the bridge to the other side or must return to the earth to learn further lessons. By another account, after the soul meets its own image, it appears before a heavenly tribunal where divine justice is administered. Good souls go to heaven and the excellent abode. Evil souls are consigned to a hell, the worst existence. One account reflects a belief in reincarnation, the other does not. In the oldest Zoroastrian scriptures, heaven and hell are not places, but states of mind that result from right or wrong choices. Zoroastrian spoke of house of lies and house of song, to which the souls are sent. Some say that the fall of the soul into the house of lives means a return to the soul of the soul to earth, the realm of unreality or lies. And I was thinking, I don't know if this applies, but when I was reading about the beautiful form and the ugly hag, when this religion was brought to the masses, if they might have been of like new souls, or so they needed a more concrete way of looking at things to get them to move along, or early souls in their evolution. I don't know. That was just my thought as I read that. You know, like when your kids are younger, you kind of have to be more harsh with them. I did. Not that I did. Other people I know were. Just kidding. You know, to get them to pay attention. So you don't want to run out in the street. You don't say, "Oh, honey, you know, the angels will come down and take you away." I know one mom who had 9 kids. A gaggle of ducks or geese got hit by a car, and she brought her kids out there and showed them, this is what could happen. You could be killed like this duck was, you could live and go on, or you could be maimed and wobble on the rest of your life. So maybe that's what the gods were trying to do to humanity at that time. That was just my thinking. So
The humanity at that time was us.
right.
It's not-
Right. And I know I need those images. You know, you can't just say, "Oh, this is what you should do. It's the right thing to do. This is what you should do, because if you don't, this is the result, or this is the result." So, okay. All right. So they went over the practices Aban did of the burial in the Tower of Silence, the importance of fire, the social practices. I just wanted to mention this real quick. Zoroastrians do not proselytize, and consequently Zoroastrians are born into the faith. So I remember that. So, and here it's a little harsh. It says if a Parsi woman marries outside the religion, her children cannot be Zoroastrians. But if a man marries outside, his children can become Zoroastrians, although his wife cannot. No doubt these restrictions are later aberrations and are not befitting the lofty ideas and teachings of the religion. So I meant to ask Aban that, what do they do now? Because obviously their numbers are dwindling. That's what I was trying to ask. Or do they can you convert? I know anybody can practice these, but yeah, that was my question about that.
Officially, you cannot
Right.
become a Zoroastrian, just as you cannot become a Jewish,
right,
person. But I think now they are allowing people to convert the more modern movement within the Zoroastrians.
Right. Okay, and then they talk about the scriptures which Aban talked about, and the fundamental moral practice. Good thoughts, the intention of moral resolution to abide by Asha, the right order of things. Good words, the communication of that intention. Good deeds, the realization in action of that intention. Living these 3 principles is a way we exercise our free will by following the law of Asha, the right order of things, or as Jerry said, Dharma. These 3 principles are included in many Zoroastrian prayers, and children commit themselves to abide by them at their initiation ceremony, which Aban talked about, marking their responsible entry into the faith as practicing Zoroastrians. They are the moral code by which a Zoroastrian lives. I have a trivia question, but first, does anybody have any comments about these? Okay. Does anybody know who the famous Zoroastrian who is also a musician? this is how I learned about the good deeds, good thoughts, and good words, was through this movie. Yes, Doug?
I was going to actually say Brian Ferry.
That may be, but that's not who I'm thinking of.
Okay. Because he talked about Zarathustra in a couple of songs.
Oh, okay. Okay, that might be.
And he was with Roxy Music, but it's more of my useless rock and roll information.
No, this is totally useless rock and roll information I'm about to give. So, the band Queen,
Oh, yeah?
Freddie Mercury was Zoroastrian, and I don't know what his original name was, but yeah, he was.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
It was a Parsi.
he was a Parsi. His family was Parsi.
Oh,
So,
see, now that's important to me.
yeah, and a trivia night it is.
That's good. I'm going to go check that out. Thank you.
Okay.
For someone who doesn't listen to music, Doug seems to know quite a bit about music.
Only rock and roll.
That's because he is the champion.
Oh,
Good one, Jerry.
I was a drummer for 37 years, but I always kept the day job. So,
All right.
checkered past, I don't bring up too often.
Okay.
Along with my other checkered pasts. Thank you.
Okay.
That's good.
So, any last comments? I'm looking forward to the next 2 weeks to what Annie Besson has to say. Unfortunately, that chapter is 40 pages long. So if we can just try the first half and just take out snippets that we find important. I know like the first few pages were about the dates of Zoroastrianism. So we can skip that and see if we can pick out the occult nuggets in there.
Yeah, we can pick out teachings.
Thank
I
you.
think that's what you're trying to do with comparative religion.
Thank you for putting that into better words.
Thank you, everybody.
Yes.
Okay,
Hey,
thank
Jerry.
you.
Right.
everyone.
Gotta run.
Okay, so many blessings. Thank you. We'll see y'all next week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, Queen.